He is the fifth generation cattleman from Chase County, Kansas, stewarding more than 13,000 acres and 80 tallgrass prairie in the heart of the Flint Hills. His family has been ranching on this land since his great-great-great-grandfather settled there after serving in the Union Army during the Civil War. That's pretty cool. Today, Daniel continues that legacy by managing one of the region's most respected red Angus herds, roughly 800 cows. Driving a modern data-driven approach to genetics, grazing, and ranch sustainability. So give Daniel a round of applause.
All right, everybody hear me all right? Perfect. Okay, other than that, I guess a little bit we'll jump right in. Like you mentioned, we're a cow-calf operation in eastern Kansas, 100%. So I like to tell people that's why, because I'm a simpleton. And I look at basically all these things we're talking about today, and it's really, really complex. And so basically from a operational big view, I'm not a very good mechanic, and so we're going to try to eliminate as many pieces of machinery as we possibly can. We live in the Flint Hills. We have we ruined tires. I've never worn a tire out. We just run them until we poke a hole in the sidewall and we go buy a new one. So that's terrible. So as few tires as we can possibly handle is the best. Even down to some of the soil health, the antagonisms. I'm not the best guy about figuring it out, but what I have figured out is perennial roots and livestock is really what I'm good at, and it really is, it's a really easy way to improve your soil health, and so that's where we put our focus. So all that being said, what I'm going to talk to you guys today about is virtual fence. I'm under the assumption that everybody kind of has a basic what is virtual fence by this point. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it from a broad overview. I'm jumping right into more of an applications, whereas Michael was kind of a broad topic. We're going to be really specific in practice on this next hour, to the point that even though we're 4.5, 5 hours away from home, we're going to move 200 fall pairs here in the next 30 minutes. So that's kind of what we're going to set up and do today, and you can see how easy it is. Hopefully you kind of understand a little bit more about why it's appealing, especially to a simpleton who has cattle. So with that being said, you'll see different brands starting to hit the market. Halter is the one we'll be using today. There's E-Shepherd, which is a Gallagher product. Vince, no fence. There's another one from Norway that's going to be coming online here in the next year. Monal or something like that. What I would say is they're all going to have, at this point, some strengths and weaknesses. I'm not going to tell you which one to use in your operation, because everybody has, whether there's some certain specifics in software that you like. Hardware is a big issue, or big difference, I guess, separator between them right now. I will tell you this, that we use Halter because of the hardware design, not the software design. We're on the east side of the state. We get a lot more rainfall than you guys do. We have a lot of just standing water where you guys might not. Some of these other collars, the brains of the collar, if you will, are on the bottom side of the animal. So it can be waterproof, but every time you take a waterproof something and actually physically dip it in water out in the countryside and do that multiple times a day, or let that animal just stand in that water and do that over and over again. We did have another one that was Vince, actually. We had issues with water infiltration because of my zip code. We went with Halter because the brains are on the top of the animal. And so by putting all those electronics on the top of the animal, we solved a lot of our local issues. It's a New Zealand company, and so it was actually developed in an area where they get 100 inches of rain a year. And so we figured, well, if they're that wet, hopefully they got this deal figured out, and they have. And so that's a long way of saying this one's halter. I love halter. It's really pretty great. Doesn't mean it's going to be the one for you guys. I'd encourage you to kind of talk to all the companies. This is a couple NRCS slides I stole real quick from Doug Spencer. We were just talking about Doug. He gave me permission to rip these slides out of his slide deck, so I'll give credit to him. This is kind of, without getting into weeds, this isn't necessarily just kind of a quick overview of what we're going to be doing. Why I put these on here. The harvest efficiency number is what we're going for with what we're doing today. This is the whole take half, leave half mindset, good way of thinking about things. Harvest efficiency is that grass that's actually going in the animal's mouth. So what can I control as a producer in the country? Well, I can't control how much grass I grow. I can with some rotations, but I can't control the weather. I can't control how much rain we're going to get. I can't control the timing. So what's the best way I'm going to get more utilization out of a piece of ground is I'm going to get more of that grass actually into that animal's rumen. How do you do that? Well, you let them have less time to trample it. You let them have less time to lay in that grass. Those are the times that I'm going to use the term wasting that grass. I know some soil health people will kind of scold me for that mindset, but Farm Credit would disagree. I'll be honest with you. And so how do we get more of that grass into those animals, pass it through? We concentrate how many animals are on there, and we lower the time. Pretty simple. So the reason I put this slide up is we have this kind of the USDA slide as they put out as 25. What we're working on our math today is 80. So if I can turn 1 acre into 3, that's a good way to ranch. So we're going to jump right into it. I know you have some notes. We'll do this first one here. We have on this first set of cows. This is some assumptions here. The bottom side is important because I've just texted my wife and she did do it today. We are unrolling hay that we took off of this paddock, and we're putting it back down on it for daily feed. Why are we doing that? It's a little bit counterintuitive. Our stockpiled fescue is so rich, we're actually putting out some dry hay to slow down that bypass. So it's kind of when we have some cattle on like the warm season, the native grass in eastern Kansas and Chase County, we'll be feeding hay because we need energy supplementation, protein supplementation if we're doing alfalfa. It's quite the opposite here. We're just putting out some hay to just, I told people tongue in cheek, like we're AIing these cows. In fact, they'll be in heat tomorrow. I got to get out of here and get home to pull some cedars tonight. Behind a cow that's on stockpiled fescue and alfalfa is a bad place to be if she doesn't have something kind of slowing her up a little bit. And so that's what we're. So, but that 1,400 pounds of dry hay needs to go into our math here, and so we'll hear it in a later bit. Got out the grazing stick. These are right there on the side. None of this is my own math or my own innovation. This is just using what people have taught me, and it's third grade math. So 300 pounds an inch of stockpile is right there on the grazing stick. Is what you use in a good tame grass mix. We had 18 inches of stockpile this year, and I've actually cheated that down a little bit as we got in further. Long story short, we had a great fall in eastern Kansas. Hard to complain about it. I want to leave 4 inches of residual, so that gives me 14 inches of consumable grass. You can see what that makes. We're going to assume 80% harvest efficiency. And that's that number I was telling you about while we've had the slide here about 5 minutes ago. I put it in bold because it's a big deal. If you really want to how do you get more out of your acres? You use them better. How do you pay for collars on cows? You get more utilization. Harvest efficiency is a big, big deal. So first set has 120 cows in it. You can see, you kind of go through there, and they're going to eat 43.75 pounds of dry matter a day. Go through there, so we need to give them 5,200 pounds of dry matter allocation. That's what that set of cows is going to eat today. You take out the hay, we got to do 3,800 pounds. We know what we have. I have a little typo there, but we know how much, because we use the grazing stick, of what we have for what we're growing, and at that 80% harvest efficiency, that set of cows is going to need 1.13 acres allocation today. So now, bear with me while I do a little bit of a technology changeover. I'll say that this company, and it's not a bad thing, has put all of their technology into their phone app. Because they only have so many engineers, basically, is the reason. When they first did it, I was a little bit disappointed in them for doing that. But as we're using it, it's really the only way to...
It's slow.
It's slow?
It takes a second.
Okay.
It's a little vintage. Even when you plug it into the computer, it usually takes a minute or two.
Okay. We'll let it think
It says
here.
it's searching, so that's good.
Hey, there it is. Look at that.
Just gotta be patient.
So, I'll zoom out here. So this is kind of our basic overview. Does anybody know, has anybody ever driven by on Highway 50 in Chase County before, down in the river bottom? Yeah, before? So this road is Highway 50. If we zoom out a little more, there's Strong City. So these cows are actually right along US Highway 50, right west of Strong City, real time. A little bit of a backstory is that 320 acres there, it's actually 315 with that little home site out of it. That was played out farm ground up until about 6 years ago. We were able to purchase that. It was about 2% organic matter. It had a hard pan. I mean, not just a hard pan. This guy loved to work ground. We took it into perennial grass, and everybody thought we had lost our damn mind. We were, I guess, a little bit of a gambler because it was right on Highway 50, and you know how those sort of things go. Whether we were heroes or zeros, everybody was going to know. Luckily for us, we were able to do some things that made it work out really well. Don't have to be a wizard to tell you that in the last couple of years, calf prices versus corn prices, we got extra lucky, I guess. So I'm going to zoom in here. You can kind of see right now these are all pairs, and so I'm kind of creeping ahead. I'm giving them. You can see the last couple days, and we can move this along. But does anybody remember what we were going to give them? 1.13, right? The other thing I should ask is, how many times would you like to move these cows today? Twice. Let's do half and half. That's a pretty good thing to do. So here's where we're at. We'll move this over. There's 0.65, and let's go ahead and they've been on this long enough. We're gonna move our back fence up. So we're gonna save that break. Then you'll have 4.5 acres. 4.5 acres allocated. They have 0.6 acres of new, if you can kind of see how this is all going to go. We're going to say shift cattle. We're just going to give them the whole area. They'll find this real quick. I'm going to hold this. Now in 12 minutes, that's to let all the instructions on the collars update and tell these cows where they're going. And I don't have it on me, but basically we all just moved about a quarter mile of hot fence. It was, I don't know, 300 miles away.
Yeah.
So now for the next sticky part, which is where I really like it, because I always tell people my goal is to make this thing pay for itself with the grazing. You can get it paid for, but you have to use it. If you're just using this to see dots on the map, it's going to be hard to cover the roughly $70 a year it is on a cow. If you start upping these harvest efficiencies, you're going to be able to use it. I was really bad when I was doing polywire on probably taking too much. You mentioned that earlier. I was really of the mindset, because of farm credit, be honest, that, oh, we have enough of this grazing to get us to midnight tonight, but those cows they'll make it till morning. Well, if you've ever let cows do that, you see that neuroticism that they have when you kind of let them get empty, and then they're running you over when you're rolling the fence out of the way the next morning. What's really great about this is you can set it for any time you want. So if you say, well, those cows really have enough grass to get them until 10 p.m., well, then set your next break at 10 p.m. In fact, I didn't do it today because of this, but my most common time I move cattle is at 4 a.m. The reason why is they had some metadata that they're starting to show that cows get active at 4 to 5 in the morning. They're looking for something to do. I set all my breaks the night before to move, but the bigger part of that is, so when I get up before the kids get up to go to school and I make a cup of coffee, the first thing I do is I get on my phone in the morning and just see if all the cows are where they're supposed to be for the day. And then I go about my day. And so it just is one of those kind of a time machine, I guess, in terms of labor savings, that you get more hours of the day, because we're not going to go out and move fence in the dark. I've tried it a couple times. It's awful. So we got half their grazing done. We're going to go ahead and use this template for the next one. You can see there's the water tank down there. We're going to give them another 0.665-ish, whatever that was. And for fun, let's just bring in a little more back fence, because this is a presentation, right? So we'll set that one, we'll save that break. Now,
And you have a couple that are outside in that fence that you just set.
yeah, that's fine. So I'll explain that one in a bit. Yep, we do.
But they'll
Let me finish, I'll set this one, then I'll come back to that. So there is that cue. Oh, I screwed up, I hit one button out of order. We'll have to hit that one after here in 12 minutes to schedule it. So these are out of that next area. That's a good catch. Not every company is the same, but Halter, one of the other things they do that is incredibly well is, because these are on solar, not battery, they're not starved for power, and so they have a lot more features. One of those features is there's a kind of a buzzer deal, vibrator deal under each ear of the cow, behind each ear. They learn to walk into that. That's a positive cue. So the beeps are kind of a warning, the shocks are negative, but the vibrations are a positive cue. Just like going in a pasture and honking your horn, kind of that Pavlovian response. Halter they learn to walk into the vibrations. So if you're moving cattle over here, this ear vibrates. If they look back this way, this ear will vibrate. If they look straight at it, both ears will vibrate. And these cows will learn to move themselves. And so I actually use this like later tonight if we're going to pull cedars on a set of cows. In fact, I'll show you. My brother might be already setting it up. He is. He's starting to move them. So this is the set I have to run and leave and pull cedars on. They were on this fescue. My brother's actually walked them out of here into this native, and he's given them this big paddock. He'll be shrinking this up. But they have to be up here 1.5 miles away tonight so we can pull cedars at this barn. So he started the move now, just getting those pairs 1.5 miles closer with collars, just so we don't have to work as hard.
So preparation is like your herding dog, it's already
Yep.
starting pushing.
Yep, and so yeah, he's gone, probably the hardest move already is getting off fescue on the native, because clearly that's a tough move. But now that he has them locked off of there, you can kind of see what he did this morning. And now he's starting to bring that set of cows up real time.
So like the Gallagher system, we've seen like, there's a buzz, or it's a sound, and that cow instantly wants to step back, right, when it knows it, because it knows what's coming next.
Yep.
So does
So
yours do the
ours
sound?
does the sound, but it's really interesting because it'll start out as they get close to it, it'll start kind of beep, 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 and then it's a solid tone, and then it shocks on the solid tone. And the cows actually learn that to a point that's almost really frustrating to me, is that cows will, another, I guess, kind of a little tangent on this, they're much smarter than we give them credit for. Much, much smarter. They learned this system in 3 days, and I'm still learning it. But we've had a whole set of learning curves that are interesting, but those cows will, because they are a prey animal, I mean, it's in their DNA, they will go stand in a corner of a virtual fence, just like they would go stand in a corner of a barbed wire fence. And I thought we were going to eliminate those areas where they kind of tromp out the corner. We can make more tromped out areas in a pasture if we're not careful, like out in the middle of native, out in the middle of a 2-section pasture, and they will find the security of getting in a corner of a virtual break, and they'll just go stand in it. Because they get in there and they like hearing the beeps.
Right.
Those beeps in their ears, when they understand that the shocking is on the other side of it, but they're not getting shocked, they find security just in their mindset of getting in those corners. And so we're starting to do a lot more rounded deals on native and some things, but it's those learning curves that we really weren't quite ready for. That.
So the software got to catch up to where, because most of that's just drawing the line, right?
But
So
you're right now. The problem is with the engineering, you are limited to, I think, 36 points.
Oh, so you can't make those curves because they're.
So as long as you're in if you're careful with your points, you can round them off. But at some point, you start running out of points to drop on your rhombus or whatever you want to call it that you're going around.
So have you started to make smaller paddocks and move more throughout the day to counteract that?
So yes and no, and we'll get to that in the slide. So on native, we can do too much. On these sort of tame pastures, crop residues, I don't know where the limit is. I had some standing warm season stuff that we're moving 6 times a day on. Think of it as a productivity squeeze. So if you have a highly productive area, you're going to get more production out of it. Some of the more sensitive areas, you have to think of that you're protecting those areas with. If they don't have a lot of juice in them to squeeze in the first place, you're not going to get much more out of them. But maybe you're protecting some of those areas that might wash and blow, or protecting the water sources and things like that. So it is dual use, but it really, we can get a lot more out of it and do a lot more good on crop residue. That's where I would see its place out here. Corn stalks, because you put cows out on corn stalks out here, what do? The first 3 weeks they run around and half of them try to founder themselves, picking all the corn off the ground. And then, they eat all the goodies out and then they're done. Well, if you could give them strip by strip, so you still had, on the ground is a bad way to store grain, but if it's spilt, if you can, if you get to the week of Christmas and they're still finding corn on the ground, well, that's when they need that energy. It's not right after you kick them out. And so that's that productivity squeeze that I think everybody needs to find themselves. It's all over. We're all terribly inefficient, me included. And this is one of those things that just lets us figure that out. In 2 minutes, we'll be able to update that other one. But in the meantime, I'm going to switch back over here real quick.
So is that boundary all from satellite, or do you have something out there physically that?
So, good question. We have 4 towers on our place.
Oh, okay.
That's a little limited by geography. You could get away with less out here. You don't have all those hills getting in the way of the views. And so We have 4 towers. It's GPS. It's a combination of it's internet. We have a couple Starlink ones. A couple are cell towers. I'm not an engineer on that stuff. I install the ones they tell me. Those talk to each other. They mesh out. They blanket your ranch and signal. And then those towers are what communicates with that caller.
How big are these towers?
About 30 foot tall. I can pull up a picture and show you. It's a solar panel with a mast and a box. It's about 1.5 feet by 2 on it. Pretty simple. The first one we put up, I think it took us 2 hours because we didn't know what we were doing. I put up one the other day and it took me 10 minutes. Not too hard.
So you can move those around?
Yes, yeah. After the first one we put up, I thought, I'm never doing that. And now I move them around fairly often.
Will high wind blow them down?
No, I haven't had a wind issue. I did have one get hit by lightning, and it did not fare well. But I haven't had any lightning issues. It does have a solar panel on it, so I mean, golf ball size hail, probably going to ruin that solar panel like it'll ruin anything else. It's south facing.
They're in the same pasture as cows?
Nope, they're where they can get coverage. So,
You had them in the same pasture?
yep,
Do they bother, or you just fence it out?
I just fenced it out. I just didn't give them access right around it. So, it's pretty easy. Just drop the point where the tower is, and you're allocating grazing, you just don't let them within 10 foot of it. So now we're going to do one more. Get a little out of order here. Now I'm going to jump back over. Gosh darn it. So now we have 76 head. Do you remember our rough math of what they needed for allocations?
350 pounds of forage per inch, and you're giving 80%.
Yep.
You need 8 inches of forage.
Mm-hmm.
1.6 acres?
How much?
1.6? 1.3?
Be less than that bigger group.
Yeah.
Okay.
So probably
I've kind of cheated because I've kind of
8 or so.
And here's where it gets kind of interesting is my wife already texted me because this doesn't get away with stewardship. Like, you can't do this. She was out here today and she told me this set has some residual. You can see them still kind of scattered, like they're still on the line that we gave them grazing on yesterday, but said they're still cleaning up. So she told me to lower this a little bit today. So for ease of that, we're going to give them 6.6 today. Actually, I'm going to use the old way because I like it better. How about 2/3 of an acre? It's a little wonky, but we don't care.
Don't sneeze while you're moving the fence.
Yeah. Don't get the caffeine shakes like I got right now.
Roger, I think you need this.
I'm thinking wintertime grazing, this would be a hell of a lot better than driving your range.
Yeah. So just like that, we moved another couple 100 yards of fence. I didn't do any back fencing on that because kind of in comparison to size, so you can kind of see what we're working with. Each of these blocks is a 40-acre piece with a water tank in the middle. So that's 40 acres. When you really get to thinking about what that looks like on 40 acres, we're pretty tight. We're pretty tight on that. This one has actually shifted, and so because I did it out of order, my enthusiasm. And so now we can schedule this shift. Oh, because those ones are getting there. Now we'll just do this. So, what time would you like those cows to get their last grazing today? Okay, whatever you want.
1:30.
1:30, I heard. So when you guys are doing some of your meetings here later on today, we're going to have these cows move at 1:30. So,
How many moves can you schedule at a time?
I don't know what the upper limit is. I've done as many as 5 or 6 in one day, but I don't know how many you could lay out. I don't know if you could lay out like a 10 or 20 or 30. I don't know, honestly. They kind of discourage putting out like a week's worth because they want you to get out and actually see them. But I mean, I'd say do whatever you need to do.
Well, I'm not gonna speak for everyone in this room, but there's a lot in our area that are farmers that are really bad ranchers, right? So when you have technology, it's the same on the pivot, right? So they forget to go check their drip oil because everything's telling me it's moving and it's running.
Right.
So where do you get the mindset that you still need to go out and make sure you don't have an issue of something going on? Because I know that technology has really killed a lot of the guys with the pivots because they don't check them and then.
Yeah, this doesn't replace animal husbandry.
Right.
It's
But it will
a
make guys
tool.
lazier that don't want to go out there and do that. Especially if it's like Roger just said, 40-mile-an-hour winds, it's sub-zero.
Yep.
I really don't want to go out there. And you find out they don't have any water.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Now, the cows will ultimately leave. If you lock them in an area without water, the good thing about this is they aren't actually physically contained. You know, you can't, the only reason this works is it works with animal mindsets of you're putting them in a position of where they already want to be. And we're providing them water, fresh grass, their calf is there running around. They have no desire to leave it. And to that point, you don't collar bulls. Why? Well, a 6-wire barbed wire fence isn't going to keep the bull from going and breeding your neighbor's heifers. Why is a collar? Because if you think like a bull and put that math, all I have to do is get shocked and then I get to go breed the neighbor's cows. Deal. And so, you know, there's some limitations there. You know, we calved with it for the first time, and we'll get to here there in a bit. And I had some questions about, you know, what would that look like? And kind of tongue-in-cheek, I've told people that if just getting shocked 2 times keeps your cow from going over and finding her calf, you need to sell that black bitch and buy some red ones.
Right.
Because she has no maternal ability whatsoever at all. And so, you know, it is a tool, and there is a talk to be had about, you know, what kind of genetics work within this whole system of increasing grass utilization and management and maternal ability to work within this constraints. And it all touches. I mean, that's kind of what I do. That's kind of my interest. But yeah,
problem with heifers too, they just want to take off and keep running each other around, you know, and they just do their thing as they always do, right?
Yeah. And so to that point, we don't, we're not doing any sort of yearling type animals for 2 reasons. The cash flow is harder on a yearling, especially a short season type animal, because the collars are a year-long commitment. So if you don't have the animal on your place for a whole year, that's tough. 2, they're a growing animal. So that collar fits fairly snug on that animal. So a growing animal, they told me, they wanted me to try some. I said, well, you'll need to get those animals in every 6 weeks to the chute and increase, you know, and give them more space. In the Flint Hills, we barely have facilities to ship Mexican yearlings out. Like, we just don't, that's just not in the cards. And so, yeah, we don't have yearlings done yet because they don't have a viable business model to support it. Hopefully they get there.
So do you lease the collars and the towers, or?
You buy the tower, you lease the collar. The collar, and this is a little different from company to company. I know, like Gallagher, you actually purchase the collar outright. Halter is a SaaS business model, service as a subscription as a service. So they own the collar, I subscribe to it, they give it to me. I didn't know what to think of that when I first signed on. It's freaking great.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you have
Because if a
problem,
collar breaks, not my collar.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a box in the garage. I actually kind of have them set up so they're kind of poking out the window to make sure there's enough sun on their panels to keep them charged up. I don't have a lot of issues, but if I do have an issue, I scan my phone on it, slap it on a cow when she's in the chute the next time, and move on. And so I'm really happy I don't own them, actually. I mentioned earlier, my goal is to kind of pay for the collar with grazing, but there's some outside the box management issues or things I'm really pushing on to try to make it pay. And that gravy is where I'm kind of trying to see what we can do. Obviously we're in the Flint Hills, we burn every year. That's something that is more romantic when you aren't actually there, pain in the butt. So as you can see in this picture, this is a grazing heat map. I grazed fire breaks in on some couple different neighbors who didn't necessarily want to burn or shouldn't burn, or I don't want to burn with them or whatever it is. And so you can see what I'm doing on that border. I'm actually just grazing that grass, grazing a fire break once that grass went dormant. It's my own pet peeve, I guess. Uh-oh. Can you hear me? There it is. I hate, as a guy that does kind of rural fire, mowed fire strips. Because you get that thatch laying on there, and then we put the fire out, we get that thatch wet, there's always a fire underneath it. And so once we go a half mile down the line, we look back and there's a rekindle because it went underneath the wet thatch. So we're eliminating that wet thatch, which should be, it's going to be great, actually. That's about a mile and a half, 2 miles worth of fire breaks that we've gone now. I should say kind of the other public good of that's actually on the Tallgrass National Preserve that we did that. They bring in U.S. Fire Service guys on a per diem to do that work. We probably saved the U.S. taxpayer, I'm not kidding, $30,000 by grazing those fire breaks and not having those hotshot guys come out, because they milk it real bad. They milk it really, really bad. And I got rid of a lot of their work. This is the thing I was most excited about this fall. And once again, it's just kind of how do we squeeze the productivity out of this? We did a modified sandhills calving is what I'm calling this. So we're registered operation. It means we take a udder score, birth weight, calving score. We have some data points we have to measure at birth. By philosophy, I also don't believe in calving in a pen. We calve out on native, and there's some reasons, some genetic reasons for that. But once we are running in these fall cows, there's about 3.5 sections worth of grass that we calve on. Once we would go and check every valley, every nook and cranny, and check those calves. In the heat of it, we put about 25 miles a day on a four-wheeler, and it takes about 3.5, 4 hours to make that run. With this method, I was just taking the cows that hadn't calved yet, and I was just holding them on about 25, 50 acres on top of a hill that was easy to drive to. Just make it so I could find them. We cut our daily actual calving down to about an hour, hour and a half. So we saved about 3 man-hours a day, and we were doing it with about 2.5 miles on that four-wheeler. So just saving time, and if you've ever put 25 miles a day on a four-wheeler in the Flint Hills, we tear them. I mean, they're just junk when we use them. We're on about a 2-year trade, and don't buy one from me when we're done with it. We just rip them apart. So that's what you're seeing here. This is the set of cows, actually, kind of trying to link it all together. This is the north set of cows that we just moved. So the ones that you just gave more grazing to on their pairs, this was them about a month and a half ago on native calving. But really, not rocket science. I mean, it's simple, and that's why this works. It's simple, I'm simple, and I'm craving more simplicity.
So what is the process in the app too? Are you selecting that cow and then?
Yeah, I should show you. Let's see if I
How
can.
does that work to differentiate?
So, let's see if I can. I might be able to do this one on. It's going to be easier to do it if you don't go over it. So each cow has one of those dots. It's like click on that dot. She has her own little window pop up, and it's select mob, and then has some different things. So I was running 2 mobs side by side. So there's actually 2 the NC and the N is north, they're in the north pasture. NC on this slide is north calf. Not pretty simple, once again, on how we do things. So they would be held as the cows that hadn't calved yet were in the N group, those purple dots. Once I took her udder score, her birth weight, everything, last thing I'd do is get on the app, click on her, and move her to the north calf group. So now her instructions include that paddock, but also have that wider area. And if you can see on this picture, some of those cows, as soon as they had that extra, they'd take their calf and they'd run off and leave. Some of those cows would hang out for the next day or two with the ones that hadn't calved yet, but they did it at their own speed. I'd do it, I'd leave, it's however they wanted to handle it, they go handle it.
So would you give them a day or two to move them to that next group?
No, they did it as they wanted. I didn't, low touch. I mean, if they were content to stay there on top of the hill with the other ones, that's where they stayed. It wasn't, and if she were off by herself, or, I could look at my phone from my house and go, well, there's a cow off by herself. She's already calved. Her dot's yellow. So once we went to check them, well, I'm not going to go check that one. It's a yellow dot. She's done.
They get tougher as they got down to smaller numbers because the herd mentality, like they see everybody else is leaving.
It was not as bad as I thought it'd be.
Yeah.
It was not as bad as I thought it would be. I was suspecting that was going to be an issue, and we,
Right.
yeah, and we kept them.
Place to go.
We I don't have a really good answer why it wasn't. Yeah, but they had water, they had grass. I think they were enough cows that they were in a clique where they were. They held pretty well. So we're going to do more of that. This was the one that I was telling you about that we were moving 6 times a day. This is my sacrifice paddock that's off of the actual fescue. It's such a high value to us, so we do get the right amount of moisture that we can really mud stuff out if we're not careful. I think probably just our heavy clay soils. I've always heard at some of these workshops, people say we just tromp it out and the next year it grows back and it's healthier than ever. You'll see the green spot. We tromp it out and it's just dead. Like it never comes back ever. And so we have a 50-acre sacrifice paddock that I go on to when things get muddy. I had this idea. We used sisal twine. We planted some sorghum sedan, just sedan. We hayed it once. We wrapped it in sisal. We left those bales in the field. We blew a cool season cover crop mix into it as it started to come back to life and regrow. And we had the most unbelievable stand of rye and radishes and hay bales, standing sorghum. We lost our rye. We got army worms in it. And the one thing that I did learn, I'm not going to blame them, but I called the co-op and said, I got army worms in this, can you spray it? And they looked out with all those hay bales in there and they said, absolutely under no circumstances are we going to spray that for you. So we lost our rye this year, which was a little bit disappointing. But you can see on that slide, kind of in the background there, that's the ones that I was moving because it was so muddy. I was giving those cows about 2 to 3 feet. And then a couple hours later, I give them another 2 to 3 feet. I mean, the technology is that good on halter that you can allocate that little bit of forage. As you can see there at the bottom there, they just line up to it like a bunk. And they eat that, then they move a little further and they'd eat that. And we were doing that just to 80% harvest efficiency. So we'd have put them out in that, they'd have trampled. I mean, we wouldn't have been at 5 or 10, honestly. We'd have just knocked all that stuff into the mud. Last thing, I do think this matters. I think it's worth talking about. I had mentioned that we were doing the burn breaks on the tall grass preserve. The reason we got started on all this virtual fence in the first place was a collaboration with Kansas State, the Nature Conservancy, a couple other organizations, and we started a wildlife study, which I think is really maybe one of the more impactful things I hope I've done in this industry when we're done. It was the interaction of wildlife and livestock, not the segregation of the two. And that's a big word to distinguish between those two. And up until virtual fence, we really didn't have an actually good way to manage that and study that. Even if you put out a single wire, that's a perch site. And now you're going to have different predators, you're going to have different birds. I And even just that much will affect some small nesting birds on how they live in a prairie. Early indications, and they had little mini GPS backpacks they were putting on sparrows and thick thistles and prairie chickens, and I mean it's a 5-year study. We had like GPS collars on the cows, we had GPS collars on the birds, and see what happens. It's going to be positive for livestock. Kind of the early indicators are there's times a year that they don't necessarily want to be around livestock, and then they get through a nesting period or something, they move back within the livestock. But it's as everything is in this space, it's more complicated than maybe what people thought it was going to be when they started. But that's good. I think it's going to give us a really good story to tell. That's what the red triangle is on that slide, was an exclusion zone for that time period. So they would draw red triangles on our map, and we just knew in that time period, cattle don't eat that triangle. So we'd graze around it. And then they'd have other areas at the time they'd want us to graze into. So real time, as they were doing their studies, we move in, move out. There's, like I said, no hardware, no perching sites for any sort of a predatory bird, any of that. And it would not have been possible without this, and it is kind of I think it's uncomfortable reality is this idea of maybe a social license to operate is going to be real in the future. And they have more money than us. So work with them, don't butt heads with them. I think we have a good story to tell if we lean into it. And so that's what we're doing there. So kind of getting towards the end here. Main considerations to think about: water, water, water. When I bought the system, they kind of sold it to us as the only thing that's going to limit you is your imagination. Bull crap. The only thing that's going to limit you is your water access. And that is just soul crushing. I mean, it is absolutely, I thought we were in pretty good shape on water, and our ranch is abysmal when it comes to this. One of the worst things we had is 30, 40, 50 years ago when my granddad was putting in water ponds, and at the time it made a lot of sense. He would not put a pond on the south side of a pasture because what do cattle do? They graze into the wind. And so when he would only put water sources on the north side of a pasture, they graze into the wind, they get done, they'd walk back to the north side of the pasture. And he was doing that to control grazing distribution even 40, 50 years ago. Ahead of his time, I mean, really great. If you're trying to manage, this afternoon we're going to eat the south side of that ditch, and tomorrow they're going to be on the north side, and then we're going to eat the top of the hill, but the water's 3/4 of a mile away on the north side of the pasture. It sucks. It just really gets into what we can do. And that's why it works so well on that, where we're at on that fest view, is because it's kind of the Greg Judy model that we built the 40-acre paddocks with the water tank in the middle of it, and then I have my hot fences space, so I know that from the hot fence, it's the 660-foot deal, and so I know that every one of my high tensile posts that I have is an acre, and that's because I'm a simpleton, as we've established. So when I was doing the reels, I just count posts, and then that's how I did my math. But we have the water tanks. The other one, your honest willingness to adapt. We're doing a lot of things differently on the ranch than what we were 18 months ago, 2 years ago. If you are going to use this and do what you're doing now, it's going to be a hard time. It's going to be hard to cash flow. You've got to change how you're thinking about certain things. The last one, and I have a slide on this. This is really it's an uncomfortable one, I think, to talk about at things like this, because people like to think we have silver bullets that cure all problems. Maximizing animal performance is not maximizing forage utilization / land performance in a big way. And you're going to have to pick which one you want to do or make compromises between the two. And I guess before I move on, that slide is, that's in that standing forage, and I needed to get to the fescue, and so I grazed an alley. Is what that, I took 2 or 3 days, and I just made my own alley, grazed through it, and then we moved the cows down it. That's what that is. So I kind of mentioned, and somebody asked earlier, I said we get to it, is how many moves can you do? I said, we can have too much of a good thing on native. This was kind of an experiment I did this summer. There were 100 cows in each group, so it wasn't an insignificant amount of cows. The Wildcat group, that's the name of the pasture. They're actually on the lease pasture, so those cows weren't even collared. They were just kind of running out in Flint Hills native, like every other cow in Chase County in the summer. Actual cow weights, 1,240 pounds, 93% breed up. The South Heinzen, we're moving them every 5-ish days, depending on the paddock. Sometimes it was a week, sometimes it was 3 days, depending on where they were on water, where we were grabbing them. But it was medium intensity, I guess is what I'd call that. 94% breed up, that's 93. I mean, that's the same. There's nothing statistically different there. Really, 1214 and 1240, same deal. I can't remember when we were taking, those are actual weights, not adjusted weights. That's a drink of water on a hot day. I mean, those are the same results, in my opinion. This bottom group, the Wamsconce group, we were moving them daily rotations on native range. Really aggressive, really working them hard, really trying to grow a lot of grass. I mean, think about it in terms of grass production, maximum rest days on growing prairie, really working it. We quit it about August 15th because it was getting pretty obvious what we were doing. And you can see, we heard our breed up, we heard our cow weight. I have some reasons why. In the Flint Hills, there's about 300 species of grass, or plants, I should say, about 60 of grass, but it's diverse. And when we do it right, it's even more diverse. And I think we've done a pretty good job, and we have a lot of plants out there. There are wild differences in protein content, palatability, just name it. If we're asking a cow to not only calve, but get bred back, put on weight while she's doing that, because she's a mammal, that's what she needs, is a little fat on her ovaries if we're gonna ask her to cycle, is that the time that we need to tell her that she needs to not eat every plant? And so that gets into our utilization, our harvest efficiency, but we're learning this, that there's times that we can really push this, there's times we need to back off. Getting a spring cow bred, a little bit of selective grazing is a good thing. That's kind of, in 5-day moves, we're still going to give that grass a lot of rest and recovery on a 5-day rotation. A lot. Because you're really talking, you're going to graze it 3 times, maybe 4 times the whole summer. That's really pretty good. So we're doing the right things, but it's not going to be gung-ho. Where we're talking fescue with some orchard grass and alfalfa and clover in it, whatever. 3-4, they're all really palatable, pile away. And that's the same like wheat pasture or something like that. My goodness, like, you can get crazy.
So on like a native, would you just go a bigger?
Yeah.
A little bit larger?
Yep. Just you lower you increase your time period to like that 5 days a week, whatever. And with that, then you're going to lower your harvest efficiency because it's not as efficient. And so you can just see when you do the math, it gets a little disappointing because you can just see those dollar signs of your stocking rate just die. It's what it is. If there is anything about it, it does give you a little more flexibility on your water development because when you're given a 5 to 7 day paddock, your water's not, all of a sudden water every quarter, half mile is acceptable. But yeah, as you get all excited about the cool season, and you're like, wow, we're 300% of normal stocking rate. Look at this is awesome. And then you're like, well, we're more like 125, 130 on native. It's nice, but it's not 300% either. And we could get to 200. We're going to hurt conception rates and some things. And then I always worry about a registered cow herd. What do we do in a dry year? For me, destocking is a lot more painful than just somebody with cell barn cows. And so we're running on native about 125, 130%, like I said. But we're stopping feed in about April. And I haven't started feeding my spring cows yet because I can grow so much just standing dormant, horrible forage. But I can put out a Dr. Dave's gonna be disappointed in me. But I can put out a non-natural protein, a biuret type product, and I can increase my throughput with just cheap, fake protein supplementation, and I can get those cows to go first of the year without feeding anything. Most of my neighbors with commercial cows, and there's not a lot in the Flint Hills because it's an expensive place to have a cow, but you'll look like May 1 through October 15th is kind of the window that those guys won't supplement, and anymore you're really more like May 1 through October 1, and they're feeding quite a bit on each side of that. So if I can stop feeding about a month before my neighbors, and I can start feeding about 3 months-ish after they start, 4 months of delivered feed's a lot. It's a lot. And so if you can do that on top of the 125% stocking rate, you're still moving the needle. So
Roughly how big were your, like, on the, thinking out here in western Kansas where we're not gonna be able to go, you know, sicker, 3/4 of an acre at a
Yep.
time or whatever, are you going 5-6 acres?
So on our native, a continuous grazing is going to be anywhere between 8 to 12, depending on the piece. So it's bigger country. I mean, it's bigger. So you say 10 on average for a pair for a full season type grass.
And you think you could go back into it, say you graze a 10-acre paddock over here in the corner, whatever, you move through the rest of the pasture, and that, say, a quarter of the
So that's going to be real specific to your grass types. So what I like to do in the Flint Hills, we have a terrible growth curve. That's why it's full of short season yearlings.
Yeah.
So we have an explosive growth in May, June, and that's about as good as it's ever going to be, and then we start tapering off. So I match my rotation based on our growth. So about that April 15th to May, I try to hit all the grass once. About a month turn on everything. The next turn, I try to spread it out to about 45, 50 days. So I hit the same areas, but it's a little bit, the whole circuit is a little bit slower. The third time they go through it, it's going to be 80, 90 days. And so it's the same areas, but it's just slowing down as that growth slows down. And so getting up in front of it is the hardest part, actually. Just trying to keep it vegetative and keep it going. And it feels like you're doing a lot of moving. And then by the end of it, what we're doing is we're taking those, say I was on a 100-acre piece the first time, and there were 100 cows on 100 acres. I just make up a number here. And they were on it for 3 days, and they moved off. Maybe the second time they're on that 100 acres for a week, and we move off. That third time we come around, maybe we take that piece, and we break it into maybe a third of it. They're on a third of it for 5 days, a third of it for a week, and a third of it for 10 days. That's what's good about this is it's so specific to the actual conditions that you might go, well, on top of that hill we got more, on this side hill we got less, but we want to hold them here. And that's where you get those differences, is you do start getting pretty detailed with it. But I'm finding that I'm getting a lot more, I'm slowing down and doing that more selective grazing later in the fall because they're bred. And so I'm kind of pushing it a little more on that native at that time.
Did the app give you much for reports or analysis type deal?
Not enough. And they're working on it supposedly, and we're going to get there. But that's kind of that's a weakness that they have. They have the information. They're just working on how to digest it and spit it back out. Because this is technology that was developed for New Zealand dairy. And I don't know much about New Zealand dairy other than it must be the easiest grazing to ever do in your life. Because it doesn't get hot, it doesn't get cold. There's 2 types of improved ryegrass pasture they have. And their growth is so predictable that you know if you use ryegrass number 1 or 2, like they're 2 mixes, and you plant here, this is your growth curve. And they just know. And so they never really put all this measuring in because there's no need for it. Because why would you know what you have.
You don't need it.
You don't need it. And so when they got here, that's what we were showing them some RAPS data on our ranch of growth curves. So they're like, how much grass are you going to grow this year? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? At first they were how? I think they thought I was a bad manager. It's like, you don't even know how much grass you grow? No. Like within like 250%, I don't know. You know, talk to me on July 1 and I'll have a pretty good idea. And so they're building that in, but it is like everything else. I mean, they are a livestock-based ag tech company. We think that's big in this room. It's not, in the big scheme of tech, it's a pretty small company. And so they're trying to fight for engineers and getting some of these back ends, but it's just going to take time. But they have the information. It's just a matter of getting it presentable how we need it.
We know then it'll just be an overall cost to you when they get that information.
Yep,
I mean,
that's right.
It's a bad curve, right?
Yep. So, if I can have one more thing kind of to show here. So this is the set of cows that we moved. People always ask me, what did it look like when they move? So you can see this was that's the fescue. That's the strip ahead. That's kind of where we were. And yeah, they're moving. As somebody came, I had somebody who really wanted to see a move one time. They drove from Missouri out to our place. It's like, I mean, we can do it. And he watched this. We kind of parked off a little bit out of the site and watched him go to a next deal. And we got done, and he was kind of disappointed. He said, the comment he said, he said, that was boring. And I think that's kind of a good way to end it. That's why it works. Because it's slow and boring, and that is the speed of a comfortable cow. And so kind of that's what we just got done doing a couple hundred miles away. We kind of did a little bit of the questions, but does anybody else have any questions before I go?
Are you seeing a difference in herd health?
Yes, that's a great question. The calves aren't collared. So it looks, and even as they're getting a little older, it's not nearly as clean here. The calves are starting to really range and go out and be in that bigger grass. Year on year, last year we put 30 pounds on our fall calves because it's true creep feeding. They're out eating that top inch of that fescue, you know. When we had the snow here 2 days ago, I guess, we had 3-4 inches of snow. Those calves go out and they get in that tall grass. They have cover. They're not fighting for anything with those cows. It's kind of interesting. They'll come back in the cows for maybe 2-3 times a day. They're there. They get nursed off. They nurse, get licked off, get cleaned, whatever. They leave their mother. They go right back out in that tall grass, and that's where the calves spend most of their day. Herd health is phenomenal on the calves. Really, really good.
You mentioned your wife and brother, so is there a master control on who sets the paddocks? Or have you been like, why did you set it that way? And I mean, does everybody have access to that control, or?
A couple of us do. There is a read-only option that my parents may or may not have read-only.
They think they're doing something and they're not.
Yeah. They don't even know how to do it. They can get on and see it, but yeah. But so yeah, we have, what we do, we just divvy it out. So this set of cows is yours, this set of cows is yours, and we can cuss and discuss what you did later. But we just kind of, that's what we did.
Yeah, that's right.
So do you have any perimeter fence?
Yes, yeah, because of what we talked, bulls and calves.
I was just saying, when you said you were along Highway 50, you
Yeah,
want to talk about freaking people out, you see cows out there, no fence?
Yeah, all the phone calls the police
Yeah.
department's gonna get.
we still have some neighbors that will just run a single hot wire along Highway 50, and I just can't. I run 6 wires of barbed wire, because it's just, oh man. The calves and the bulls, I mean, you'll still have perimeter fences everywhere. Yearlings, you know, if you wean a set of calves, I mean, they can't be collared yet. And so, yeah, there's still gonna be, good fences will still make good neighbors down the road. But, you know, fewer of those fences is worth a lot of money.
One other thing, like when you're setting up your paddocks, can you save that for later usage? Like,
Yes.
save it as a
Yes,
file?
you can apply a previous one, yes. And that is a good point. They had that, and we were all excited about where we were. And then we did a big software update with them. They changed how they were doing a lot of their back-end software, and we lost a lot of that data. So what they did was, and this doesn't seem like a big deal to me, but all their software design up for the first year of this was the cows went in the pasture contained the instructions, and then they would work within that pasture. That's where you could graze, but you put the cattle in the pasture. They've changed all their software to the herd of cattle has the instructions, which to you and me, what does that mean? It means you can graze multiple pastures with one set of cattle, or you can graze more than one herd within the same pasture. That's why I'm able to do that Sandhills calving with those cows side by side as they change that logic. And so I made the switch. I thought that sounded way better to me for management flexibility. Or like what my brother's doing now, moving those cows up through one pasture into the other. We couldn't do that with that old logic. But when we did that switch, all my old historicals are gone. So
now that we've kind of talked about it a little bit more, do you wish they would have a bigger website and have it more on a laptop, or do you like having it on your phone, or would you?
The data
Some days
accumulation.
use it on an iPad to get a bigger screen or something.
I'd never, for day-to-day moves, I'd never use my computer. It'd be nice to have like a dashboard on the computer for the data side that you're talking about, like accumulation of grazing days, for example, or some of those things. It'd be nice to have that. I would never move cows on a computer. Because you saw how I did it. You just, oh shoot, I pulled that up and it whipped. It's just too easy to drag your finger for 2 inches and move a quarter mile of fence. It's just too simple.
Do you have to have, obviously you're probably gonna have a newer phone, but do you have to have, like, say, do you have limitations within your,
No,
the speed of your phone?
my wife has,
On the phones.
yeah, my wife has a iPhone
Or like a
8,
13,
10. She has an old one, and she's getting by with it. But she has a little one, and she doesn't want a big one.
Yeah.
So she's holding on for dear life.
I'm with her.
So that's kind of the last update. So there's that first set of cows we moved. You can see, we gave them that sliver of new grass. Well, where are they? So they're piled in there really high. We could figure out the pounds per acre stocking rate. We did pretty easy. It'd be a couple 100,000 pounds. It's not a million, but it'd be 300,000 anyway. So pretty decent. Go over here, and there's that second set, that Leo group that we did. And so pretty obvious where they got their instructions that we gave them, and they went. I mean, that's the long and short of it, is they went where they're supposed to.
So your learning curve time on the app was how long, you think? Were you still?
A couple days to get comfortable with it, and then a month or two of checking it all the time to see if things are working right. The good thing about them is there are updates all the time. Like the app that we started with is not the app we have today, which will not be the app in a year. I come to ag deals and I'm like one of the younger guys. When I work with Halter, I'm like the oldest dinosaur who's ever existed involved in a company. It's a young company. They're a bunch of kids out of school. They're changing things. It's refreshing, actually. It's really refreshing. So I look there. He's gonna have to go drive them. They tried to go back to the fescue. But yeah, that's what it is in a heartbeat. I said I'll be around over lunch anyway, if anybody has other questions, but.
What's the cost per tower?
3,000, I think.
70 a year?
Yep.
Return on investment, where you're at now today, kind of what you think,
Like I said, the grazing will pay for it pretty easy. I can pick up $70 in feed expenses.
in one grazing, or how much,
I can do it in a year.
a year?
I can do it in a year. You take bottomland fescue and you multiply it by 300% grazing efficiencies. that's where I make my, like, the native is a little harder for me to just cash flow it right off the bat, but when I can pile cows, it goes, that's that whole thing I talked about, that, what is the production you can squeeze? And when you're in that stockpiled fescue, especially when you're stockpiled fescue in Chase County, where what do we not have is winter grazing. And so the value of that winter grazing, and we can just pile cows into those tiny little areas, and just milk that. I mean, that is valuable ground for our ranch. And so that pays for itself. 30 pounds of calf, as we were talking on a fall calf, that pays for it. Now, market conditions might not always be where that's so shiny. I mean, you'd hope we can still get $2 a pound for a calf here in a couple of years, but you know, last year, $30, I mean, I bought 3 collars this year. And so the math works when you use it. Like I said, if you just got on it and stared at dots, it's gonna be really expensive. Cause it's the cost of an employee.
Right.
But like, I've won the basketball games again, I haven't missed a school concert.
That's important.
You know, you get a little bit of your life back. I mean, we move cows here, we move cows Thanksgiving Day, like our cows will move on Christmas. And so that to me is one of the bigger things, and they've asked me to quantify it, because they're trying to figure out like all their investors and everything. And like, what are we worth versus what do we pay ourselves versus, like, there's a real disconnect in agriculture. Like I told them, like, I value my time way more than I write myself a check for. But because of that, like, if you give me another hour a day, well, that's freaking great. It's worth a lot more than the $15 freaking or whatever it is on the check. And so, but be flexible. That's my advice, is if you do it, grazing fire breaks, you know, use it to calve. I mean, if you're gonna pay it like a hired man, treat it like a hired man.
When you got started in it, it sounds like you adopted it across hundreds of animals. Would you recommend to a guy start with 10 or 20
so we actually
find out
did. So
where
that's a good question. So we started with 100, started with 200. After 6 months, we doubled that to 400. I'm still not on every cow. So we're working on it, and I'm gonna put another 200 on this spring. So I'm actually legging into it, like you mentioned. My hang up, so I think the first 100 was a good idea to kind of figure it out. My hang up is we do leases like cavemen in Chase County. And so everything is year to year. And I'm trying to get some people to do 5-10 year leases to justify me buying a tower and sticking it up before I just go whole hog. And I've had mixed success with that. And so I guess hard enough for us to just get them in writing, let alone like a 5-year, 10-year type situation. But that's the deal. It's hard to put a lot of infrastructure. Now, granted, we can take the tower with us, but you buy a new tower, you sink the new post, you put it up there, and then you find out in 6 months that you lost that lease to somebody else. Well, gosh dang, because the collars are a 3-year commitment off the bat. So we're working on it. I'd love to have them on every one of them.
Can you talk to the training period of the cow?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, on a brand new set of cows, you put them out there. If they're whatever they're used to is what you use. Our cows were used to a single wire fence, so we put them in like a 5-10 acre deal with a single wire, just poly wire on the reel around them. So as they got close to that, they got those, and then we put the line right on top of the fence. So as they got close to that hot fence, they started hearing those beeps before they got close enough to it to touch it and get shot. The next day, we pushed them back, but we pushed the hot fence, I think 30 feet, let's say, and we pushed the virtual fence 20. So they started getting those signals. They saw the hot fence, they know what that is, but they started interacting with the collar before they actually got to that wire. The next day it was like 50 and 100. So we made it a little more exaggerated so they could still see that hot fence, but they got a full shock before they got to it and figured out what was going on. 4th day, we took it away. I'm getting really lazy now. If it's less than 20% of the cows, I don't do a training period. I just kick them out and they figure it out. If they're in a new pasture with cows that are broke to it, they don't want to just leave the group and go be by themselves. And so you just kind of let that herding mentality just train.
Take some time to trust that.
Takes me time to trust it, yeah. It took us when we first got it, we were checking our phones all the time and be like, oh my gosh, like, it's still working. We did have we had a couple of deals. It is interesting, they do kind of have some back-end engineering that they have to fine-tune. To save power, they didn't know what because they're getting this figured out, but when they just came from New Zealand, they weren't used to our latitude, longitude, like winter, sun angles. They just weren't they didn't know what our power usage was going to be versus our sun production. And so they had our collars cranked down that they would talk to the tower about every 10, 15 seconds. And then that collar would be basically offline for 10 seconds, wake up, see where it was, and shut itself back off, or 15 where it was. We had a handful of old cows that realized that if they hit it, it'll run. That they could actually get through it, because they don't just get shocked. The zone's about 30 feet. And then for animal welfare stuff, once they get on the other side at 30 feet, it shuts off the shocks and it's just vibrations to bring them back. Well, we had a couple cows that realized that they had 15 seconds to run 30 feet. If they could get on the other side of it, they were golden. And so we had to get that kind of, we had to wake up some of those collars and make them always on to retrain that set of cows. That old logic, when I was telling you it was still pasture dependent, not herd dependent, when they dropped our files in, they actually missed one fence by about 20 feet, like where a fence was where it wasn't. Think of it as we had an invisible open gate in the middle of an invisible fence. And they found it. And just like cows do, I mean, once one saw it, like, they all went. It's like we came home one day and they were all out of this paddock, but we had no warnings on it, like our collars didn't do anything wrong, but they were all out. And so we had this whole engineering deal. It was like, what happened? And they went back and looked. They're like, well, they all went through this one little area, and they started looking. Sure enough, there was a place where they didn't quite line up, and we left a gate open.
Do you get any feedback, like if you've got a cow that's gone down for one reason or another and she hasn't moved for a couple hours, does it let you know? Or
It's going to be coming soon. So they have it on dairy cows. And I'm probably speaking out of turn. They're beta testing a bunch of algorithm-based beef models
like biometric data?
that are taking longer. And it's really interesting. So each collar has an accelerometer in it, which is a 3-axis measurement. And so how they know a cow's in heat and dairy, or how they know a cow calved, or whether, those are just algorithms based on when the collar does this, and then they measure it a couple million times, that's a cow in heat. And this is a cow, when a cow's walking this way, it means this. Dairy cows are really easy to hit with an algorithm because they all walk the same. They're basically all in a similar barn. There's 5 Holstein bulls that the entire globe goes back to. But they can do anything with a dairy cow because they all walk the same. Whereas if you have a Hereford cow in sand, or a Red Angus cow in rocks, or a Black Angus cow in Iowa, whatever it is, they walk different. And so they're getting the algorithms, but it's taking them a lot longer to get them than what they thought. It's taking a lot more training data.
When
So-
that solar flare happened and a lot of guys lost GPS on their tractors, and did that affect the collars at all?
Evidently not. I didn't know anything about it.
Speaking on that though, do you ever get worried about the solar power since the collars are solar powered, like in the winter when it's completely overcast and you don't have any sun?
So, yes, but we haven't had an issue yet. And that's something that there's some engineers in New Zealand that are doing things that we never see. And one of them is a monitor power. And so when you get that, they start, like I was talking about, that 15-second delay between the collar talking to say power. They're doing some of that stuff on the back end that they see that they have some, I don't understand how it works. But the collar has different speeds or power usage, I guess, at different times based on those things. And don't ask me how that all works. But yeah,
I just didn't know if you'd had any experience with it being.
I haven't had any yet.
No, No, that's
Uh,
good.
yeah, it's good, yeah.
You mentioned your parents have a read-only.
Mhm.
How was that transition from the older side to the newer kind of up-and-coming technology, or what struggles did you have there? Because that's, out here, that's.
It's an industry-wide
Yeah.
issue, yeah. I'm lucky. Our parents have given us a free rein to be more creative. And part of that is, I think too, is, we've been in the area a long time. I mentioned that in the intro. The actual current iteration of the ranch is still only about 2 generations old. And so like when I'm joking about farm credit, I'm very serious about that. Like we're in debt. And so we have to be creative, and we have to, like status quo, we're gonna go broke. And so we have to reach for these things. So that was good. And the results are easy to see. So once we pushed over the edge and you can see the things we're doing, it's good. The biggest pushback was probably my mom not able to use her horse. Because like the spring breeding, she was really annoyed that she'd go saddle up and the cattle were always at the pen. Because I was making these paddocks and I was just bringing them to the pen. She'd go get ready to do a cattle drive. And it's like, oh, that group's right here too. Like, I don't know. How's that happening? But
You said the brains are on the top of the cow. Do you ever have any issues with that collar slipping or?
so yeah, so it's on top of and there's a weight on the bottom. And so there's a counterweight that eventually will pull it back up. We have had a couple tear off. Like you'll get a cow scratching on a post or something and get her head stuck. They have to draw an engineered fell point at some point or you're gonna hang cows. And so we've lost a handful. But when you lose one, to this point, for the most part, where you see the dot on the map, and you drive out there and you pull it off the tree because you drive right to it, and then you go on. But yeah, you'll see them, and if it is kind of that way, like as soon as they start grazing, it'll go up, it'll kind of balance itself out. I meant to bring one. It's in my other car. I brought my daughter's car here for gas mileage, and so the collar I was going to pass around is in the grocery getter. But anything else? All right.
Give him a round of applause.